Good morning, everyone. Welcome to CBRE. My name is Lan Phùng from CBRE Vietnam, Hanoi office. I'm looking after the industrial and logistics services for northern regions of my company. I'm glad you join us today in this webinar to explore the Tier 2 markets of Vietnam, the potentials unlocked to the China's reopening. I'm happy that we have today our colleague Nhân Đào from Ho Chi Minh office and Mr. Frank Pham from CBRE Shanghai. So we hope you enjoy the next hour with us. The first part for the local market overview will be led by myself and Nhân for the next half an hour, followed by Frank's presentation to cover the China's economy and also the investment to Vietnam from the Chinese investor point of view. If you have any question for us, you can find the chat box on the screen. You just put your questions. We will save the last 15 minutes of our webinar today to answer your questions. Now let's get started. Before we talk to Frank to listen to his expert idea about China, let's take first the close look to the local market. So for the next 30 minutes, we will walk you through the overview of Tier 2 markets in Vietnam. What are the driving forces for the development of this area and also the potential for the market development? Let's get started with the overview of the market. We hope that you like our map here. We try to highlight the Tier 1 and Tier 2 for you, make it very visible. So you see that Tier 1 and Tier 2 markets are concentrated in the northeast of the regions. The Tier 1 are shaded in green light color, include 5 provinces and cities, Hà Nội, Bắc Ninh, Hưng Yên, Hải Dương, and Hải Phòng. Meanwhile, the Tier 2 markets are in olive colors. Vĩnh Phúc, Thái Nguyên, Bắc Giang, and Quảng Ninh in the north of Hanoi, and also Hà Nam and Thái Bình in south Hanoi. So, you know, the Tier 1 or Tier 2 markets are classified based on the distance to the major city, such as Hanoi in the north and Ho Chi Minh City in the south, and also are classified based on the maturity of the sub-market development. So now looking at the Tier 2 markets, you can see that the total supply of industrial land by 2022 is 8,600 hectare leasable area in 53 industrial parks. Compared to the Tier 1 markets, you can see the accumulated supply is smaller. But on the right hand side, that you will see the net absorption in 2022 in Tier 2 market is much greater than Tier 1. So the annual growth rate is 35% up year on year in Tier 2, which show that Tier 2 has been attracting very good investment from the investors. That's what is going on in the northern regions. We hope that there's something similar happening now in the south. So we would like to hear from our colleague in Ho Chi Minh City to share with you on this. And then over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Loan. So as you can see here, on the left-hand side, the map showing the Tier 1 and Tier 2 market. Tier 1 market is highlighted in green and include Ho Chi Minh City and 3 other traditional industrial provinces such as Bình Dương, Đồng Nai, and Long An. And Tier 2 market is highlighted in brown, including 4 provinces such as Bà Rịa Vũng Tàu, Bình Thuận, Bình Phước, and Tây Ninh. So in total, there are around 37 industrial parks in Tier 2 market, and the total industrial land area is over 16,000 hectares, and leasable area is over 11,000 hectares. So compared to tier 1, we see that the supply of tier 2 is still lower. So in tier 1, the total supply of leasable area is around more than 21,000 hectares, almost double than tier 2. But look at the net absorption in 2022. So we see that the net absorption in tier 1 is still higher than tier 2, 500 hectares compared to 300 hectares. However, the net absorption in tier 1 is decreasing by 23% year on year, while the net absorption in tier 2 is increasing. In last year, 2022, it increased by 58% year on year. And in overall, we see that there are more and more demands and more transactions in tier 2. And we can see how tier 2 is potential in the next few years. Okay, moving to the next, we would like to discuss a little bit about the ready-built factory and ready-built warehouse in tier 2 market. So in the southern region, we see that the supply of ready-built factory and ready-built warehouse is still very limited in tier 2. The reason is that in tier 1 market, the supply is still abundant. There are many new projects of ready-built factory and ready-built warehouse, and therefore the tenant don't have to go further to tier 2 market. Hai Loan, how about the situation in the northern region?
Yes, and then for the north, we are looking at a slightly different picture. We all know that the ready-built facility segment have been blooming in northern regions for the past few years, with strong fundamentals such as the competitive setup cost and improving infrastructure. The northern regions in general and tier 2 has been attracting the heavy investment to the area. And thanks to the good linkage between tier 1 and tier 2 in the north, we can see that the expansions to the tier 2 is happening now very quickly and smoothly. You see on the screen now YCH and TNT Group with the highlight project of Superport in Vĩnh Phúc. They launched the project in 2020, late 2021. So far, they have completed the construction for the first phase on 84 hectares of land to facilitate the multimodal logistics services to boost the cross-border trade between Vietnam, China, and also other countries in the Southeast Asia. The other international players in factory and warehouse police sectors such as BWID, Corfire, GAR&P have made a footprint to tier 2 markets. Like BWID, they acquired a big land parcel in Deep Sea Quảng Ninh, and also Corfire by ICCK. Just yesterday, they made a groundbreaking ceremony for the high quality projects, also in Deep Sea. GAR&P late last year, they announced the acquisition of land in Dong Văn 3 Industrial Park of Hà Province with expectation to deliver a good supply of both warehouse and factory to the market this year. Not to mention a lot of supply coming from the local suppliers. So it makes that the tier 2 market now very active and attractive destination for investors. In terms of the sub-developers, so when they develop the portfolio to the scalable development, they want to offer their customer a good options wherever the customer go. That's why they want to expand to tier 2. And then in terms of the occupiers, so in the coming years, it's very easy for them to find a good option in tier 2 with a competitive renter and also the large supply. compared to tier one, the renter in tier two are more affordable for the occupiers, with the warehouse and factory rent is ranging between 3.5 to 4.5 USD per square meter per month. So let's dive down into this topic to explore the reasons why the investor is coming to tier two. The next part will be driving forces for tier two market growth. I trust my colleague Jen will walk you through this topic. And over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Loan. So there are three major key drivers for tier two markets growth. The first driver is competitive cost. So we know that the land rental in tier two is much lower than tier one, and together with the land rental cost, the labor cost in tier two is also much lower than tier one. So we will discuss it further in the following slide. And the second driver is better connectivity between tier two markets and tier one market. So we know that the government is investing heavily in the infrastructure, and in the future, when this infrastructure, when the expressway is completed, the traveling time between tier one and tier two provinces will be shorter. And the third key driver is the notable investment from the big manufacturers. So the big manufacturer, or we normally call them the queen bee. So they are investing in the tier two market because they need a very big land size, which is now quite challenging for them to find in tier one. And with the presence of these queen bees will in tier two market will attract their vendor and their suppliers to the new markets. Now go into the next slide. We will discuss a little bit about the industrial land, the comparison of industrial land between tier one and tier two. So we all know that the industrial land rental in Vietnam has increased dramatically in the last few years. In the northern region, in tier one, the average land rental is around 123 US dollar per square meter per term. And in tier two market, the land rental is much lower, only 89 US dollar per square meter per term. And also the rent roll rate in tier one is still higher than tier two. In tier one, the land rental increased by 6 to 18% annually, while in tier two, the land rental increased only 4 to 10% annually. Now, moving to the southern region. The southern region, the land rental in tier one is quite high, around 167 US dollar per square meter per term, and it is almost double than the land rental in tier two market, which is only 89 US dollar per square meter per term. And again, the land rent roll rate in tier one is still much higher than tier two. Tier one is increased by 8 to 10% per year, while in tier two, the land rental increased only by 2 to 3% per year. Now we will move to the second driver, which is the better connectivity. And my colleague Loan will discuss about the northern region first. It's over to you, Loan.
Yes, we are very happy to receive the very positive feedback from our clients all over the world. They see Vietnam as a blooming country, a superstar, a rising dragon, whatever the beautiful words they give to Vietnam. But it's so obvious that Vietnam is quickly transitioning to a very modern and prosperous country with incredible opportunities for investors all over the world. So by investing heavily in the infrastructure and reforming of administrative procedures, Vietnam now we improve the competitiveness and of the countries and stand out from the rest from the other countries in the regions. So the most important thing is still the infrastructure network, which have to facilitate the expansion of investment from tier one to tier two. So a few key highlights this year will be the ring road number 4 to improve the connectivities of Hanoi adjacent areas. The North South Expressway, especially the route between Ninh Bình and Thanh Hóa, will be completed by this April to facilitate the transportation across the provinces to have the shorten the traveling time significantly for any users. The Ninh Bình Hải Phòng Expressway is also sped up this year. And just in February, the Cap International Railway Station was put into operation in Bắc Giang province to ease the congestion and pressure for the two existing railway, one in Đồng Đăng Lạng Sơn and the other in Yên Viên. So, the overall development of infrastructure will be the first and very important driving force for the development of tier two submarkets. How about the South, Anh?
Yeah, we see that the government is still investing heavily in the infrastructure in the South to improve the connectivity within tier one market and between tier one and tier two markets. And we can see here on the map, there is at least one expressway connecting Ho Chi Minh City and the tier two province. For example, in Bình Thuận, the Dầu Dây Phan Thiết Expressway, which will be completed this year, is an expansion of a very important expressway, which is Ho Chi Minh City, Long Thành, and Dầu Dây. And in Bà Rịa Vũng Tàu, the Biên Hòa Vũng Tàu Expressway will be completed in 2026. So in Bình Phước, the Ho Chi Minh City Trân Thành Expressway is expected to be commenced this year or next year. And in Tây Ninh, Ho Chi Minh City Một Bài Expressway is being constructed and will be completed in 2027. So in general, we can see that the connectivity within tier one province and between tier one and tier two provinces are being improved. And in the future, the traveling time among these markets will be shorter and more convenient. Now we will move to the third and the final driver, which is the notable investment from the big manufacturer. We have listed some major transactions in both the northern and southern region. So we will discuss about southern region first. We can see here in 2022 and the first quarter of 2023, there are some big transactions in southern region. For example, in Bà Rịa Vũng Tàu, there is a very big project around 63 hectares from a shipbuilding and prefabricated house manufacturer. And in Bình Phước, there is a big project around 46 hectares from a Chinese automotive component manufacturer. And also in Bà Rịa Vũng Tàu, there is a big project around 28 hectares of land from a Chinese electronic manufacturer. And looking at the southern region table, the bottom table, we see that there are many projects in Bà Rịa Vũng Tàu, and Bà Rịa Vũng Tàu is quite active in the southern tier 2 market. Hai Loan, how is the situation in the northern region?
The trend is even stronger in the northern regions. So with this table, we try to reiterate that the largest transactions in the market happened in the tier 2 markets. The provinces like Thái Bình, Quảng Ninh, or Bắc Giang attracted the largest investment in 2022. So you see that the major tenants are seen in electronics, automotive, and solar sectors, with a very familiar names like Foxconn, like Luxshare in Bắc Giang, or Compro in Thái Bình, and a few big names from European countries in Quảng Ninh. Right. So it's such a clear evidence that these investors keep expanding to tier 2 markets. The presence of these manufacturing giants, so-called the queen bee or the anchor tenants, will be promising to tier 2 markets to attract more and more vendors and suppliers into this region.
Okay, the next slide we will discuss a little bit about the potential of the logistic market in Vietnam. So CBRE conducted a survey for logistic occupiers in the United States, Europe, and Asia Pacific region. And according to our survey, at least 64% of logistic occupiers plan to expand in the next 3 years. And especially in Asia Pacific, more than 50% of the logistic occupiers plan to grow more than 10% in the next 3 years. And the next slide is about Vietnam and other Asian countries. So Vietnam ranked very high in 2 criteria: the market with strong intention to enter, and the market with strong current presence. And we can see here, Vietnam ranked very high. So together with Thailand, Indonesia, and Philippines, Vietnam is a very potential destination for production and logistic growing. Okay, moving to the final part of the presentation, we will discuss about the potentials of the tier 2 markets.
Yes, let me start first. For any investment, the opportunities are opened for everyone with the large supply and competitive setup cost. So according to our forecast, the rental rate for land lease in tier 2 markets will increase steadily in the north and moderately in the south in the coming years. Talking about the supply, it is still more abundant in the southern regions, with almost 6,000 hectares coming from 4 provinces: Bình Thuận, Bà Rịa Vũng Tàu, Bình Phước, and Tây Ninh, from now till 2025. And apart from the land supplies, beside expansions of existing manufacturing giants that we mentioned earlier, the market in especially the tier 2 also awaits the positive impacts from the China's reopening. China is the biggest trade partner of Vietnam, so this reopening will certainly bring the opportunities across the borders for the 2 countries. The China Plus One strategy is expected to bring more investment to this area. And from our witness, since the reopening happened in January this year, many Chinese investors came to Vietnam to study the market, and they are also eyeing on tier 2 markets. The big names like BOE or BYD are very active now, looking for land, and also other existing companies looking for an expansion. Please take a look at the right hand side. Here is the chart that shows the FDI inflow into Vietnam. It reached the highest record in 2019, also the same time, the same year when the China Plus One took place. And under the pressure of all the geopolitical issues, the pandemic, and the uncertainties of the global economies, we can see that the new FDI register dropped slightly in 2022, but for the number of newly registered projects and the implemented FDI, you see that Vietnam still sustained a positive figures. It shows that Vietnam remains a strong position as the favorite destination for overseas investors. On the right hand side, you see, yep, there's a few names, a few headlines from the trusted sources. And we do hope that there will be an increasing investment in tier 2 market. You know, Samsung with the big project in Taiwan, and recently they also announced an additional investment in this province, making the total investment in Vietnam of 20 billion USD. JA Solar expanded to the second site in Bắc Giang province by acquiring more than 20 hectares in Việt Hàn Industrial Park. Apple supplier Foxconn also acquired more than 50 hectares and invest another 300 million in Bắc Giang factory. Compro just earlier this year also signed an MOU with Green Park in Thái Bình province to acquire 40 hectares of land. So on the right hand side, there's a few big transactions in the southern regions. Anh, can you make some more details on this?
Okay, thank you, Loan. So in the southern region, we want to focus more on the investment from the government and the industrial park developers. So for example, we can see some headline here: Bà Rịa Vũng Tàu Industrial Zones, complete infrastructure to welcome an investor. And in Bình Phước, the government is increasing the industrial land area to welcome the investment wave. And Tây Ninh can be considered a new promised land for real estate investor. And Bình Thuận government will issue policy to support investment in industrial park and industrial cluster. So in general, we can see that the investment from the government, investment from the industrial park developer, and investment from the tenant are increasing in tier 2 market, and we can see how it is potential in the next few years. And the next slide, we would like to conclude our presentation today with the 3 key advantages of tier 2 market. So the first advantage is the competitive setting up cost. So as we mentioned earlier, the cost, the land rental and labor cost in tier 2 be much lower than tier 1. And second advantage is about favorable policy and incentive. And of course, with many incentives from the government, the tenant setting up their manufacturing facility in tier 2 market can enjoy some favorable policies, so such as the corporate income tax exemption and reduction, and the raw land rental exemption from the government. And the final advantage is about the more diverse industry. So we know that in tier 1 market, the labor-intensive and polluted industries are normally not allowed. But in tier 2 market, the industry will be allowed. And that is for our presentation today. And thank you very much for your listen. And now let's welcome our colleague, Frank from CBRE China. He will give you a presentation on the China investor viewpoint regarding Vietnam opportunity. Now it's over to you, Frank.
Thank you. Thank you to Loy and Ian's fabulous presentation. Hello, everyone. This is Frank from from CBRE China. I'm sitting in CBRE Shanghai office, hands up the Eastern China Industrial and Logistics Services. Highly appreciate this opportunity to share two sections with all the team members here. Part one is China's a recently economic situation, and then is in the sights from investment criteria in the angle from Chinese investor. As Chinese protection policy, our peak infected people of COVID hit a historical high in 2022 Q4. The zero tolerance policy of COVID already passed, as we know. Now China back to a normalized situation in our daily life, and we can see that over 80% of the flights already recovered back to the previous era of COVID situation. As we know, in the past decades, very proud that China maintained a very fast two-digital number annual growth of GDP figure. Recently, we find that this increasing number is around 5 to 6% now. Although it's lower in the past compared to the past 20 years, but it's still very positive, and comparing to the global level, it's still with a very promising potential in the future. As the opening up again of China, we investigated and find out there are 5 industries with kind of bounced back strongly. The first one is food and beverage industry. As we know, the Fortune 500 company named Starbucks, they just issued one of the biggest investment globally out of US, which is a coffee roastery factory in China. This is supported by Starbucks over 6,000 stores in China, and Starbucks foresee that to 2025, the forecast is around 9,000 stores in China. The second industry is offline retail. As some of the beautiful ladies online may know, that Shein, as a China brand, fashion brand, focused on the ladies' clothes. The headquarters is in South China, Guangzhou. The evaluation of this company now rise to over $100 billion US, and also recognized as a unicorn company globally. They are now looking for the expansion in China as well as in APAC region. The third one, life science. Some of the audience may know that the revenue of medical and devices in China already take up 25% of the global revenue now, which is ranked number 2 behind the US. We witnessed there are 3 giants MNCs life science company named Philips, GE Healthcare, and Siemens Healthcare all launched their strategy in China for China recently. The fourth one is transportation and the logistic sector. We find the company named JD.com, Alibaba, and SF. These are e-commerce company, but they are in a very fast increasing channel. Actually, during the COVID, it did not impact that much because people at home still need to purchase something via e-commerce tool. These companies' new strategy is not only expanding their business from online, but also their approaches via some M&A ways, greenfield, brownfield approach to do the heavy asset in the APAC level. Mechanical point of view, there are some giant named, for example, XCMG. That's also a Fortune 500 company. Headquarters is in Jiangsu province in China. So they positively involved in the strategy of one belt, one road. And also in some of the infrastructures in China and APAC level, you will see their footprint. As CBRE's research and investigation, we find from real estate point of view, the investment return of industrial and logistics is still a higher one. That's why the number of raised fund of China for focused PE of real estate, logistics and industrial take over 60% compared to other sectors. We find these raised fund background is like overseas or domestic insurance or some wealth servants. These company, for example, like KKR, like Walker Pincus, they still treat China as a positive way to invest. Now we come to the second part, investment criteria from Chinese investor side. We divided into 4 key elements which Chinese investors pay attention to. Equally important is 30% from government support and operation factors. Government support mainly focus on some tax holiday, some free rental period, some supporting incentives. Operation factors may include some supply chains and also the clients of the potential market. Real estate side, we will elaborate more from the property quality point of view and also for the long-term perspective of the development. Less importance is 15% of the business environment, because we deem more or less when the company want to invest in Vietnam or someplace else, they will have some initial study of the business environment. Let's come to the details. The first, government support. In China, there are a lot of policies and the regulations from the government support. For example, when we acquire a piece of land, the land must with a land quota. If without land quota, this land will take a very long time for the Chinese investor to acquire in mainland China, even over 2 to 3 years. And they still want to know what kind of permittings we're gonna have before the construction. Is all these permittings gonna handled by one department as the one-stop service, or we have to come to different windows to apply for that? The supporting incentives and the subsidies comes to be a popular topic in all websites we discuss when we invest in Vietnam. Chinese investment want to know what is the precondition to enjoy this tax holiday and these incentives. What if in the after certain period, this Chinese investor, they fail to reach this figure, will that be any penalty? And how is the local portion of the tax they can join, and how long they can join? Is there any applications and documentations they gonna apply upfront? From operational factors, as we may find, supply chain goes to be very, very important. US President Joe Biden issued a regulation related to chips and science of arts in 2022. That's a kind of anti-China law. So which means some of the semiconductor companies is not that welcome to find their location in China now. That's why make Vietnam more important for these semiconductor companies now in China. So they may find some multiple solutions in Vietnam. This is also this is just a one angle from supply chain, and also the trade tariff still not eased between Sino and the US. And also during the COVID, due to the lockdown policy, we find there are some MNCs companies, they want to find some diversified locations in APAC. So Vietnam goes to be a popular place for these clients to choose. customer cluster, when we have some inquiry from our Chinese investors, this is not their this is not their active way. They more do like in a passive way because their customer asked them to find a location in Vietnam. We discussed a lot about land and labor cost between Sino and Vietnam. Let's just go into the details of these comparisons. In the upper level charts, you will find that the employees of manufacturing sector annual salary in the US dollar unit in China. We pick up 3 key regions in Eastern China, which is Shanghai, Jiangsu, and also someone in the middle, which is Chengdu. When we compare to the figure between Sino and Vietnam, we find that Shanghai's labor cost is still 3 times or even like 5 times compared to the Vietnam's average figure. The gap between Sichuan and to Honi and Ho Chi Minh, the gap goes to be not that significant now. We also compare the cost between two countries from the angle of industrial land and rental. Shanghai is still the highest compared from the rental and land perspective, which is 8.7 US dollar per square meter per month. And Suzhou and Jiaxing as the 2 cities closer to Shanghai, you can see the left-hand side where the location of them. The rental is almost a similar level compared to Ho Chi Minh and Honi. From the land price perspective, Shanghai is still the highest one, 3 times higher than the other cities. For the rest of the 2 country of their cities, the land price is almost similar. That's why we deem the rental is equivalent, almost similar, is because the land price of their of these cities in this almost in the same level. Chinese investor pay highly attention to the long-term and master plan. They want to know what is the 5-year or even 10 years planning and zoning of this region in Vietnam. In China, due to the very fast urbanization path, some of the locations in the past 5 years, it is workable for the industrial, but now it's all upgraded to the residential surrounded and some office surrounded, which give a kind of uncertainty to the current companies in China. When they invest in Vietnam, they want to find a kind of insurance and kind of safety a commitment from the Vietnam government. Land and building sites in some of the China cities, land cannot be cut into very small pieces to sell. Is that workable to purchase a small land in Vietnam? And also in some of the area, Chinese government did not willing to sell the vacant land. Means they only want to sell the land if you have a project. Okay, they don't sell the land only to the person who is rich only. And also for the quality of the utilities, we find some good investors like Goodman, GLPZ's infrastructure facility providers. They build up very high standard workshop and warehouse buildings in China. Can we find similar buildings with high standards in Vietnam? I think yes, but Chinese investors don't know that much. They want to have some more detailed information from the colleagues and from the person in Vietnam. Business environment, more or less, we hit some points previously, but I want to point out another way of the quality of the life. Some of the MNCs in China, they enjoy a kind of high quality life because they can easily find out hospitals, international schools, foreign committees. These kind of amenities is very welcome and supportive towards them. So I think they want to also find something similar in Vietnam. Last but not the least, our criteria from Chinese investors. As we know, although there are some waves between two countries previously, but Sino-Vietnam still enjoy very strong relationships, especially recently, 2022 October, President Xi signed a kind of frame strategic cooperation agreement between the two companies, between the two countries. It mainly focused on enhance of the e-commerce, the safety guarantee between the two sides, and also enhance the trading between the two countries, which means in the next 5 to 10 years, there must be a golden time for the Vietnam to development and to attract some China investors. The second point is the closer distance from China to Vietnam compared to the other APEC level cities and countries. But I think Chinese investors, they want to know how is the way of custom clearance and how is the logistic from the door-to-door solution. Finally, something more like local practice. When in Rome, do the Roman do. So Chinese investors also want to know some local practice from different cities and even maybe different from north to south of the Vietnam. So much for my side. So I will hand over back to our Vietnam team for the Q&A session. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Frank. That's such a very helpful information, and especially in the context of the Chinese investor are coming strongly to Vietnam right now. So as we discussed earlier in the webinar today, the 15 minutes now will be for the Q&A sessions. We have received many questions, thank you, from the audiences. We would like to pick up some to answer and hope to hear from your expert, our experts here. But just to remind that to receive the presentation slide today from our expert, please fill in and complete the survey in the chat box. Thank you. We saw a few questions quite similar. The first one quite easy. So from audience, from what are the key criteria for the tenants when choosing a location? So let me handle this question. For any investor, when they choose the location, the searching criteria will be first the location, second the setup cost, third the access to the labor pool. And of course, there are many other factors to support the decision-making process, including the favorable incentive, the utility supply and availability, and also the support from the landlords and the local authority. That's the summary of the criteria that the tenants is looking at. The second question, I think is for Frank. Which industries benefit the most from this reopening? Yeah, will you help us on this? Yeah.
Good question, Secretary. I think all and the majority of the industry benefit from the reopening process. But if we want to pick like one or two key industry, I would deem there are trip and tourist and also life and industry. The reason is like trip and tourist. As we have some figures in the studies recently, you see the overseas trip booking in China number, these from year-on-year base already increased 3 times higher, right? And also for the domestic business trip in China, now it's like 80 to 90% increase on a year-on-year base. For the life science industry, after COVID, the people in China start to aware the importance of medical treatment. People are more willing to purchase in medical devices or IVDs from now on. That's why the R&D and the industrial requirement, manufacturing requirement will boom in China in the next 2 to 3 years. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. The next question for the local team. Any other provinces out of the mentioned in tier 2, that's CBRE tier 2 list, that CBRE would think will be the next potential destination for investor, any rising stars? So I think this question is for both North and the South. So, Anyana, can you start with the South first?
Okay, thank you, Luang. I will start with the southern region first. So in southern region, we think Bình Thuận. So Bình Thuận is still considered tier 2 market. Bình Thuận can be the next potential destination for FDI. Two reasons. The first is the new expressway, Dầu Giây Phan Thiết, will be completed this year. And this expressway is completed, it's very convenient to travel from Ho Chi Minh City and from Đồng Nai to Bình Thuận. And the second reason is that there are two new industrial parks from the two well-known and experienced developers will be completed in the next few years in Bình Thuận. And these two industrial parks are very close to the expressway. And once completed, it can make this area very active. And another reason is that the labor in Bình Thuận is still abundant, and it's not difficult for the manufacturer to recruit labor there. And it's over to you, Lan, for the northern region. Yeah.
For the northern regions, and there are a few names not in the list, but we also see a potential destination for investment, such as Phú Thọ and Nam Định. These two provinces also own the good elements to attract investment, thanks to the good linkage between the provinces and also the competitive land price, the abundant resources of labor. So promising for two provinces to attract more FDI in the coming years. And thanks to the North-South Expressway under construction now, I think it will open more opportunities to other provinces to the south of Hanoi and all the ways to the center of Vietnam, especially the provinces like Thanh Hóa, Nghệ An, and the central regions. The presentation today mainly focused on the north and the south, but that the central Vietnam own the great strength and potential to attract FDI. So maybe in our next webinar or next offline event, we will have an opportunity to discuss more the opportunities of central regions. Okay. The next questions for Frank again. Sorry, I want to ask these questions for you too. Which attract Chinese investor to Vietnam rather than other peer countries?
Okay, it's a little bit challenging, but anyway, a good question. I think several reasons here. The first one is both Vietnam and Sino. That's the same state system, right? Both sides are socialistic country. This is the first point. And also, as I mentioned in the presentation, very good relationships between the two countries. And now even, as I mentioned, the senior management already come to some alignment. It will be easier for all the investors to do the two sides investment. And the second point is, as I mentioned, U.S. is kind of Vietnam's largest exporter, right? Also, U.S. restricts some of the export from China from some industry like semiconductor chipping, right? But very easy for a manufacturing company to export from Vietnam to US to Europe, because we witnessed some frame agreement already signed by Vietnam, like RCEP or like CPTPP. This kind of frame agreement is quite good for and benefit to the investor from China. And also, we witnessed some supply chain already transferred to Vietnam, which gave the confidence to the a newcomer from China say, well, there is a term named self-sufficiency rate, which means Chinese investor can easily find some raw material suppliers upper and downer level in Vietnam now locally.
Yeah,
that will
that
give
makes sense.
a good point to Chinese investor. And also I think as you listen to the presentation from our Vietnam colleagues, that the infrastructure is very mature now, even in the second tier cities in Vietnam. That's also some good points for the Chinese investor to choose. Yes.
Yeah, I totally understand. There are so many similarities between the two countries which make the Chinese investor feel comfortable when they invest in Vietnam, right?
Correct.
I think we have time for the last question. Also for myself and Nhân, which are the potential provinces of tier 2 now, and which are their encouraged industries? So starting with the north first, you know, every province is named in tier 2 has its own element, attract FDI, especially for some selective industries. We might say that all these provinces have their great strength and potential for investment. You know, but like we say, each investor has its own criteria for the size search. So because of the geographical advantages and existing presence of anchor tenants, so we might say that Vĩnh Phúc and Bắc Giang are still favorite destination for electronic sectors, or in Quảng Ninh, thanks to the good infrastructure system, the large land bank, and convenience for logistic activities, is now selected by multiple manufacturers in auto parts industry and also in energy industries. Thái Nguyên and Hà Nam, on the other hand, with a close proximity to Hanoi, continue to attract heavily the investment of the top vendors and suppliers for Samsung, for Wistron, Kista. Thái Bình, yeah, with the abundant labor resources, they can accommodate any labor-intensive industries. That's for the northern regions. How about the south, Anh Nhân?
Thank you, Lan. And of course, when we talk which is the most potential province in tier 2, it is subject to the tenant industry and their supply chain. But in general, Bà Rịa Vũng Tàu can be considered the most potential destination for foreign investment in the tier 2 market in southern region. There are two reasons for that. First one is the connectivity to Bà Rịa Vũng Tàu. So the connectivity from Ho Chi Minh City and Đồng Nai to Bà Rịa Vũng Tàu is being improved along with the existing national road number 51. The government is investing in the new expressway being Hà Vũng Tàu. And in the future, when this expressway is completed, it's very convenient and for tenants to travel from Ho Chi Minh City and Đồng Nai to Bà Rịa Vũng Tàu. The second reason is that in Bà Rịa Vũng Tàu, there are several deep sea ports. We call Cái Mép Port Cluster, and this is the biggest deep sea port in the southern region, and it can handle large ship up to 200 deadweight ton ship. So this is a very big advantage for Bà Rịa Vũng Tàu. And please also note that Cái Mép Port Cluster ranked number 19 among the largest deep sea port in the world. And the encouraged industry in Bà Rịa Vũng Tàu so include electrics, and supporting industry and mechanics industry.
Yeah, thank you, Anh Nhân, for your answer. So that also brings us to the end of our webinar today. So please take a minute to fill up the feedback form and send back to us to receive the presentation slide today. We once again, I would like to say thank you for joining us today and hope to see you again in other webinar or event by CBRE. Thank you so much. And if you leave your contact details or emails with CBRE, we'll try to reply to you in person to answer all of your questions. Thank you again.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you and goodbye.
Bye-bye.